The United States Supreme Court is allowing the Trump administration to enforce the latest version of the president's travel ban. This means President Trump will now be able to stop people from 6 mostly Muslim countries from entering the United States, even if they have ties to the U.S.
What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now!
The power of the people is greater than the people in power.
I'm here today to announce that the program known as DACA that was effectuated under the Obama administration is being rescinded. To have a lawful system of immigration that serves the national interest, we cannot admit everyone who would like to come here. It's just that simple.
I came here at the age of 7. This is the only country I know. If I were to go back home, I don't have anything back home. This is my home.
Justice for the Muslims, justice for us all. Which side are you on, friends? Which side are you on? Justice for the Muslims, justice for us all. Which side are you on, friends? Which side are you on? Justice for the Muslims, justice for...
Ohio University just arrested, I think, about 70 people for peacefully protesting in a building that was ours to protest in.
I got the intel. Do you want the intel? I was nice to the lady cop, and we're getting charged with like failure to disperse or something, but nothing's gonna happen. We're getting a piece of paper and leaving, and I guess that's what's taking so long, just getting individual.
Yeah, I didn't think they would actually
I didn't think so either.
So how it started was just a group of friends in a living room, just like watching the executive orders being released and hearing the stories of like international students on campus who were going to be affected by the ban. And we decided that we would have some sort of like show of solidarity. And that quickly became something much bigger than we ever thought it would be.
Students sitting in a circle getting arrested for fighting for what they believe in. All right, real nice, OMB, real fucking nice.
During the rally, I was the MC, so I was working with some of the speakers, especially those who English wasn't their first language, so they wanted to make sure that what they were saying was coming across in the way that they wanted it to come across. So I remember at the end of all of the speakers, I was supposed to have a small speech. My speech was basically supposed to get people excited and ready to go into the street to march and to go to take further steps. And it was really to encourage people to take risks. I was quoting Mario Savio about how you have to put your bodies on the line for things that you believe in. You have to put your bodies in between you and the machine that is oppressing people. And I remember saying that and feeling really strongly that it was time for us to put ourselves at risk for people who couldn't do that for themselves, or for I don't know, I just remember feeling we literally had to put our bodies on the line. We had to put our bodies in the street in order to make change. So I said that speech, and I remember saying something okay, we're gonna march in the streets, and everyone just kind of looked at me and I was like, no, we're really we're gonna go in the street. And then when we got to Baker, it was kind of we're here, now what?
There were a lot of things going through my brain at the time. When we were sitting in that circle and people were singing, and people were coming closer together. They weren't at that point people who had decided to leave, because we had encouraged people if you don't want to risk arrest, leave, right? we thought everyone was owed that opportunity to leave freely, and that was not at all a reflection of like their lack of commitment or something. We didn't think that at all. We gave people the choice, and then we were left with this group of people who were like hugging and linking arms and like singing, you know, and surrounded by cops. Like everywhere you turn, there was a cop, and state troopers. And I've spent years as a political organizer. Like, I can risk arrest because I know what that means for me. I know that I would be okay if I risked arrest. Like I knew that I was sort of safe, and that I had like mentally prepared for arrest. But I knew that a lot of people hadn't, and I was sort of panicking. And I was also thinking how beautiful all of it was, and but mostly it was panic. Mostly it was just like a lot of like doubt and like panic.
Which side are you on, friends? Which side are you on?
Alright, friends. There are a lot of you that are first-time organizers, this is your first protest, and I know this is probably really terrifying. I know you're all really, really scared. And I want to like thank you so much for doing this, so much for coming out, and for standing up for what you believe in. Because this means the world to a lot of people, and this sort of resistance is what it's going to take. This is all that it's going to take. Joanna and I are some of the organizers of this.
We are willing to take arrests if some of our friends don't get arrested.
So Joanna and I will risk arrest, and other people, I want you to disassemble.
I don't know, like, I was just watching people get pulled away by the police, and these weren't like, you know, they weren't like the usual, like, rebel rouser activists. Like, these were just regular students. A lot of them I didn't even know, like, I don't know, I just saw people getting pulled, like, people's bodies getting, like, just picked up and pulled by the police as if they weren't any, like, as if they didn't matter, like, and the police, like, I don't know, the way that they were handling people was like we weren't even human, or like we weren't like a real person. They were ruthless and they didn't care, and they like, and you know, people were saying like, oh, my arm, or these handcuffs are too tight, and it was just so dehumanizing, and to see people getting taken away like that. No, it was hard. And I felt guilty because I was the one that was like, ha ha ha, they're not gonna arrest us, they're bluffing. Like, they would never arrest us. And here they were arresting us. I just felt like maybe I had led people into thinking that they weren't gonna get arrested. And then some people were just trying to help. Like I saw there was one girl who was just grabbing her friend's bags. She was grabbing her friend's phone, and the police just like picked her up and arrested her, like without any like knowledge of what she was doing, without asking questions. I mean, they knew she wasn't there to protest. They knew she was just trying to help the protesters, and the police just completely arrested her.
Where they're more prone to us. Oh, they go with the flow.
I think there was always a question for the police as to whether they had legal ground in their own minds. In my opinion, they did not have legal grounds to make the arrest, again, because the students were not being disruptive. They were being very courteous as far as keeping a path clear. When the chief of police would ask them to do something, they would do something. The only thing they would not do is to disperse as they were telling them to do. It was the middle of a rally in the student center, in the main atrium of the student center, and I believe they thought they had the right to be there as much as anyone else.
At 7:22 p.m., Chief Powers delivered the first of 5 warnings via bullhorn that anyone staying in the rotunda after 7:30 would be subject to arrest for criminal trespass.
If Chief Andrew Powers came in now and saw us on the periphery and said, you all need to leave this room because you all are preventing egress from the room. And so we left. Would this gathering seated here also be arrested? Because by your logic of how you explained the events of last Wednesday, all of you would be subject to arrest if you also did not leave the room.
Hear this now. Hear this with the right ear. Once the warning was issued, the chief could not rescind it. Once the order was issued, the chief could not rescind it.
I really understand the idea of once the order is given, but the administration cannot 1 week organize and march in an MLK commemoration and then abdicate the decision of what to do with students staging a non-violent protest to the police department. That was also a failure in leadership. There was no official response. No one identified themselves as, I am here as a member of the administration. I have heard your demands. We will take it under the consideration. Please go home now. That statement was publicly never made. And the fact that the university abdicated the decision to the police department is not a consolation. It's actually more damning, in my opinion. Thank you.
Our law enforcement officials have to have some credibility. If they issue an order and they rescind it, what's to stop the protesters from coming back?
That's what they're supposed to do. So it was intentionally to deter future protests? You just said what's to stop
The point I want to make is, and you all want this to happen, you all need to see a consistent standard, and that's what the police are trying to apply.
Yes, but the right standard.
I think of another thing that was really important in this case, and the students brought up several times, that in the past when they had demonstrations, the administration would talk to them. They would send an administrator, and the thing would be worked out. There would be some sort of acknowledgement that this is a grievance that the administration would consider. That was not at all part of the scenario in this case, and I think the fact that the administration had refused to even appear was such that the students had a legitimate grievance.
We've done a lot. There is more that we will do, and I stand firmly on the ground that says we have stepped up and accepted the challenge to do something on behalf of those who will be most affected by this policy.
Let me clarify myself just one point. I didn't accuse the university leadership of doing nothing. And as said very clearly, I don't think the student demand was a reasonable or feasible demand. That's my point. But what should have been done is not to call police as the first response to student demand. If the administration had studied this issue, why don't tell the students right away that we have studied this, we are considering this, and please go home, give us time to work it out. And rather than charge them as criminal trespassing in their own building, there's no sign that says you cannot stay here for whatever time.
Like there's this one photo of all of us in that circle, and we're just like surrounded by police. And Michael, our defendant in the case, I remember him like getting up and saying like because the police kept saying like, you all are making this, like you're making this place an unsafe territory, you're blocking ingress and egress, like you are, you know, this is a safety hazard. And Michael gets up and he says like, we are not like unsafe when we sit here and we protest. We are unsafe when we sit here and we protest and we're surrounded by police.
These cops are not letting people through. They're obstructing the entrance of this building.
I have a couple concerns. One is that my understanding is that there actually was an administrator in the building, Jamie Patton, who didn't feel comfortable addressing the students. And so I really want to kind of embrace this idea that it is our role as teachers and administrators to engage with students. The second point I want to make is that I have watched 7 different videos of this protest, and I have to say, I have a hard time imagining a more disciplined, peaceful protest than the one I saw in those videos. So I'm concerned with the way OUPD is using the discretion I'm not questioning that they have. I'm also extremely concerned that there were state troopers present. I mean, frankly, their presence there was scary. I mean, I don't know a lot about policing civil disobedience, but one of the things I do know is that de-escalation is really part of the strategy. And warning people 5 times at a protest that they can have a meeting room is not taking their protest seriously. And troopers designed to intimidate students is not consistent with the commitment to educate them and mentor them. So I guess I have real concerns that when, going forward, because I think it's going to be a long 4 years, that we adopt a different kind of strategy. Policing is part of the university's job. I understand that. It should not be part of the job of state troopers. Thanks.
Yes. Black Busby, and I was arrested. And essentially what I'm getting and what you're saying this whole night is that you decided, administration decided to trust the word of the police, since you weren't there yourselves, over the students, protecting the students against the word of the police. You weren't there. Dr. Sherry Clark and Dr. David Patton were there and ignored us. We called them to talk to us, and they turned their back on us and hid behind the police. So essentially, you trusted the word of the police and supported the word of the police over your students. And to be a black woman, a black man, a black woman, and Jamie Patton as a black man sit there and let the police take us like that, when you have students sitting in a circle crying their eyes out because they don't know what the police is going to do, and this climate today is disgusting. No problem?
We heard her say that, and Jolana and I were in the meeting. We turned to each other, and we just started crying again, and like everyone, like all the professors just like burst out, like clapping and like screaming because it was so brilliantly said.
And you, Dr. Jamie Patton, and you, Dr. Sherry, like just calling out all of the black administrators and how they completely failed us. Not just as students, but as black students, how they don't live up to everything that they say. They don't actually care about us. Oh my God, you basically called them house leaders without actually saying the word. And that was great. That was the highlight of my university career.
On one hand, the issue was just, whose student center is it? At some point in time, the judge indicated to me while we were considering what we call pre-trial motions, indicated to me that he was not accepting that argument, and he probably would have found against us on that. So I quickly shifted over to the primary argument, which was always our primary argument, that this is a free speech and a right to assemble case. Now, we did a kind of an attack from two prongs. One is, of course, the United States Constitution, but we also used the Ohio Constitution, which in some ways is actually even broader and supports the freedom of assembly even more so. So at the day of the trial, and in fact I should have done this sooner, but I had been working very hard on trying to get a legal document prepared that would have laid out all the issues for the judge in advance of the trial. And the prosecutor was quite upset with that situation because she wasn't prepared for it, let me put it like that. So there was a moment, a serious moment, where there was a question as to what the case was all about, whether it was just a trespass case or whether we would even have the right to invoke the constitutional privilege of being, present for the purpose of assembly and speech. And eventually, the judge allowed it, and in his opinion, he accepted the argument that it had been a recognized forum in the past, and that the university, because of that, the university did not have the right to arbitrarily or unreasonably limit the use of that space by the students under these circumstances. So then he found that there was no trespass as a result of that. The case against Michael was held not guilty, and the other students whose cases were exactly similar on the fact the prosecutor chose to dismiss those cases. So that's how it came down.
The first thing I want to just say is that this is a very dangerous precedent. We are here on October 20th, marking the final day of what is officially the open comment period for the university's two interim policies. The most dangerous precedent is that for the first time in the university's history, it is a lawyer that wrote up the policies rather than a dean of students. In the history of the university, it is the first time a lawyer is writing policies that determine what students can protest and how they can protest. I also want to say that we are not alone here today. The campus has spoken unanimously. There isn't a major group at the university that has supported this policy. Everyone has called it a travesty and an infringement on their freedom of speech and freedom of assembly. So we are not here alone today. We are here with hundreds and thousands of people who have spoken up.
My understanding of the current policy as declared by the university is that there's no place on campus, an official place for students to have a protest or demonstration inside. Now the university does offer some options for outside gatherings and assemblies, but at the current time I think it's unusual that they would try to limit or make off limits any of the buildings, especially the student center, under these circumstances.
David Discutner, Athens PD and OUPD are perfectly aware that we're not going nowhere until we get this policy completely overthrown and nothing put in its place.
In small ways, I can see people that I met after the arrest. I've now seen them take up roles as like political organizers on campus. We sort of like brought up a new crop of organizers of activists and organizers on campus.
Now, I do understand the university policy, which is at this point in time, because of the national scene, they're afraid that some more allegedly violent or aggressive groups might come to Athens and try to use the student center or university buildings as a forum, which would then result in violence, like in Charlottesville, for instance. So I think both cities and universities are doing their best to prevent that from happening in the future. However, you know, one could argue, and I would argue, that that kind of policy is real narrow-minded and is just speculation for the main part. So the question becomes, you know, do we give up our rights because something may happen in the future? And that's what it comes down to. Do you give up your right to assemble and freedom of speech on campus? Of all places on a university campus that you can't even assemble to in a building to show your support for a particular issue.